Today's video is all about why do we take higher placement of the hairline design in FUE hair transplant cases. Most of the people must have known about this issue. Maybe you would have got some doubt. Why can't you take below hairline? Why are you taking a little higher hairline? And that's the question most of the patients had in their minds. And today I'm going to show a patient with a practical example why one should take higher hairline design, what are the reasons, and if you take little lower hairline, what are the consequences that you're going to face. We are going to discuss on a patient with a practical example. So usually the first reason is having a very less or average donor is one reason. A second reason is a large bald area. A third one, which is very important, what I'm going to show today is kind of a scalp dimensions. Scalp dimensions definitely definitely affects your transplantation outcome. So here today I'm going to show a practical example of a scalp dimension measurements and what happens if you take a little lower hairline or a higher hairline. With few calculations, I'm going to come forward to show you this video. Kindly watch this video until end. Usually, why we take higher placement of the hairline is number one reason is someone has a poor donor or less donor quality or quantity, whatever it is. That is the first reason. Second thing is advanced baldness, kind of a class 5, class 6, class 7 baldness people also definitely better to go with a little higher placement of the hairline to conserve or they save the grafts. That is the second reason. But today we are talking about something, a third reason which is very important to understand is scalp dimensions. How does this scalp dimensions can make difference or effects on your hair transplant outcome? Probably most of the people doesn't know. That's what we are going to talk in detail about this. Imagine someone has a bigger scalp irrespective of the classification of the baldness. Suppose he has a class 3 baldness or class 4 baldness, it doesn't matter, but the scalp size, if it is very big, then definitely that person needs more grafts. In such cases, if you take unnecessarily a down placement of the hairline, would need unnecessarily more grafts, where exactly we don't have more grafts in the hand, that's a problem. That is a practical example I'm going to show you today, and what kind of treatment we plan for this patient and why we have taken the higher hairline. What will happen if I take a lower hairline in this patient, we are going to discuss today with a practical example. And I'm going to show you how to measure this scalp hairline length, what are the graft number we achieved, and what are the consequences and we're going to face in the future. That's what we are going to discuss this in this video. This patient actually had very average, a little below average kind of donor, having a class 5 baldness. Well, this patient looks now, the donor looks really great, but on harvestation that day, on harvestation of the grafts, we harvested only 2,250 grafts. Actually, we thought of getting 3,500 grafts, but unfortunately, this patient had a less donor. We could only achieve 2,250 grafts. This is very important to understand. Whereas scalp dimensions of this patient are little bigger. So we had planned to design little lower hairline in the initial basis, but after the graft number we achieved only 2,250 grafts. We revised this plan to take a little higher hairline by a centimeter because this patient hairline length approximately 23 centimeters. If you take 1 centimeter down, 23 into 1 gives you 23 square centimeters area extra baldness we need to implant. To implant a 23 square centimeter area, few doctors can consider implanting 20 grafts in a square centimeter. Few doctors can consider 25 grafts. Some guys can do even 30 grafts depending on their priorities. Imagine even if you take 20 grafts per square centimeter, extra grafts required is around 460 grafts. So 460 grafts, extra grafts you need to have in the hand to implant 1 centimeter when you take the hairline down with 20 number per square centimeter. If you take 25 grafts, if you're going to implant 25 grafts in a square centimeter, you would need more than around 570 600 grafts. So the number increases per square centimeter, you need more number. Even if you consider less number, 20 grafts per square centimeter when you are going to implant, this patient would need 460 extra grafts. So well, this 460 grafts out of 2250 grafts accounts for approximately 20%. And this is an important factor one should understand. Most of the patients will ask me, doctor, it's only 1 centimeter, right? What will happen? This will happen if you go wrong, because you can go wrong these calculations, because when you take a centimeter down in this patient, I'm going to lose 20% density in the final outcome. That's because I harvested only 2250 grafts, but if you take 1 centimeter down and where 460 grafts are going in the frontal hairline only, this 460 grafts out of 2250 grafts accounts approximately 20%. So this 20% density you would not achieve in the final outcome. First of all, in transplantation, we are going to do camouflaging technique. You don't get 100% density. Imagine you are getting only 50% density, out of which 20% if you lose it, hardly you get any hair on the scalp, which is going to be a failure transplantation. This is an important calculation. Most of the clinicians, most of the surgeons, most of the patients would miss it. That's the reason one should be very much aware of these calculations. You should talk to your surgeon about your donor availability and recipient demand and supply, both you should know. So this was a very smart way of planning a transplantation. We revised the plan and we took little higher airline for this patient, where we achieved very good density. So that's the calculation one should understand. That's what we planned very smart way and got good results for this patient. Well, if in this case, if you can consider further hair loss, in the future hair loss, how are you going to deal with? Imagine already less donor is there, you have taken a lower hairline, then you end up in a kind of disastrous outcome. So that's the reason in this patient, actually, if you want second time also we can do, if he is going to lose more hair in the future, and we can get the density in the same area. If in case if you have taken 1 centimeter down in this patient, second time also you need to implant some grafts from the beginning of the hairline, which needs extra grafts. You are wasting graft first time as well and second time also. And this is a very tricky situation for a patient and a surgeon. So that's the reason you should be very cautious about designing your hairline, and you need to talk to your expertise doctor to arrive at a good plan, and which is going to be giving you a better camouflage in the hair transplantation results. Suppose the patient gets a very good donor and where more than 3,500 grafts can be harvestable first session, again some 2,500 grafts like that. The donor is very good. Definitely you can take a lower hairline. These are all applicable to the person who has an average or below average donor. This donor looks very tricky because if you see the pics, and it doesn't give you any exact picture for the surgeon until unless you examine on the day of the consultation or the day of the surgery. At times, until unless you harvest the grafts, you don't get any idea. So by looking at the pics, it may look great, but when you come onto the surgery table, then we'll come to know the exact picture. Accordingly, we need to design your hairline. So when we explain this during the consultation or during surgery, most of the patient cannot understand or imagine the drawbacks of that kind of outcomes. Well, for that, I had experience of many repair of such cases. I'm going to show one case right now here. Of course, this patient had a transplant long back with some other clinic. Actually, what went wrong in this patient is he had a poor donor and someone has taken a lower hairline. What happens if you do hair transplant in that patient? This is a typical example of that case. This guy had underwent transplant elsewhere. If you can see that only hairline area has grown, everywhere it is very thin. This is because of the wrong plan, not because of the wrong transplant, not because of the failure. Here, transplanted hairs have grown well, but the plan was wrong. So if you take a centimeter down, probably you may end up the a situation like him. The outcome should be looks like a disastrous, where you would need a repair, a corrective transplant, and probably you should have enough donor to do that. If you don't have a donor, again, no one can repair your transplant. So this is the consequence of such cases. If someone has a weak donor or poor donor, if they don't go with the proper hairline unnecessarily, if you select for the lower hairline, this is a practical example of this patient I had come across, and of course we repaired this patient. This is the outcome you can think of that kind of outcome if you plan unnecessary hairline down placement. So kindly talk to your expert before you're taking a decision on the hairline. Probably this is not applicable for all the patients. Very few patients who has a weak or a poor donor. They should be very careful. Thanks for watching.